Today, I want to provide you with a few tips on preparing your speeches. Any good speech begins with analyzing the audience, thinking about who you're going to speak to and considering their demographics. What's the cultural diversity, the gender, age, group membership, and even political affiliation of the individuals that you're speaking to. Knowing a little something about your audience will help you to tailor your remarks to them. And it begins with picking a topic and thinking about what does my audience maybe already know about this. For instance, in some of my classes, I have students do a demonstration speech. This may not be for your class, but I've done this speech many times before. And a good example of someone who hasn't considered their audience is when people choose a demonstration topic that's far too juvenile for their audience. For instance, how to tie your shoe or how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I actually did a how-to speech on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when I was in the 3rd grade. It was one of my first speeches. So I would say that that speech in particular wouldn't really be appropriate for a college-aged group. You also want to consider things like the attitudes, beliefs, and values of your audience. So that might go along with their group membership or political affiliation. And while it's not your responsibility to make everyone in the audience happy, you do want to think about the way you're positioning a message. If you're giving a persuasive speech to a group and the majority of the people in your group are politically affiliated with the left, you want to think about if you're giving a conservative or right-wing style message, that you want to tailor your remarks in such a way that you're going to be the most persuasive. So you have to take into account this audience maybe is not going to be friendly to my topic. So how can I relate to them? How can I build some common ground? Can I appeal to their values, which is a person's set of principles which they consider of great importance? Or, what are their beliefs that maybe intersect with my own, and therefore I could be more persuasive to getting them to see my point of view? So whatever side you're coming from, you want to consider how your audience is likely to feel about these things, and then try to tailor your remarks in a way that's going to be most informative or most persuasive, depending on what your goal is. You also want to take into consideration your audience's perception of the occasion. Lastly, you want to take into consideration your audience's perception of the occasion. I think that sometimes students have this idea that because it's called a formal speech, that it needs to be really dry and boring and can't contain anything useful or entertaining. And I don't know where that comes from, but it seems to come out in speeches a lot where students may just read a list of things or just sort of recite facts at us. And so you want to think about yourself as a listener. If it's challenging to you to try to figure this out, you're going to be listening to your audience, your classmates' speeches. What do you want to hear? Do you want to be just lectured at? Do you want just to hear a list of facts, or would you rather they told you the most interesting things that they could, or told you anecdotes or stories that livened it up and that made the information more engaging for you? So think about what your audience wants to listen to and help them want to listen by giving them good information. So try to get into that audience mindset, because you yourself are an audience member as well. When you're choosing a topic, you want to think about something that's interesting to you, that your audience cares about, and is right for the situation. Now, for many of your classes, the topic is more or less chosen for you. So, for instance, an about me type speech, that topic's about you. But when you have an option for, say, the persuasive speech to choose something, you want to pick something that you feel strongly about, that's passionate, a passion of yours, and that you think you can really connect with. And so you want to take an inventory of the things that you care about, and then take an inventory of what you think your audience will care about, and then make sure that meets up with the criteria for the assignment, fits in with the occasion of the speech, and then whatever is something that intersects all of those, that would be the perfect topic. Once you have your topic, you want to choose your general purpose. Now, again, this is usually chosen for you in a classroom setting. So, for instance, your introductory speech or the informative speech, the general purpose is to inform. Obviously, if it's a persuasive speech, the general purpose is to persuade. And you are going to write the general purpose at the top of your outline because it helps you to get in the mindset of, what am I doing here? What is my general goal for this speech? And a lot of times students kind of mix up the general purpose with the specific purpose, and they write a long sentence for the general purpose, but it's always just these two words: to inform, to persuade, and we don't do a speech in this class that's to entertain. So that's the only options you have: to inform or to persuade. And I think this is also sometimes confusing because for the persuasive speech, you might say to yourself, but aren't I informing my audience as well as persuading them? And yes, you are. Of course, all messages are in some shape or fashion information. However, is your goal to inform them, or is your goal to persuade them with information? It's to persuade them with information in a persuasive speech. So you write your general purpose as to persuade. That's it. You don't have to put any other words other than that. When you get to your specific purpose, that's where you'll write a full sentence. You want the specific purpose to be result-oriented, specific, and realistic for the time limit that you're given for the speech. So in an about me speech, you don't want to say, in this speech, after listening to this speech, my audience will know everything about me. That's not possible in the time limit given. So you want to say, what do you want your audience to, if it's an informative speech, know or understand by the end of the speech? So it's result-oriented, specific, realistic. Or if it's a persuasive speech, what do you want them to do, think, or believe by the end of your speech? So some kind of action that is associated. Then you want to state your thesis. Your thesis comes out of your purpose statement. So the purpose statement, again, is not actually spoken out loud. It's just written at the top of your speech to give you a point of reflection so that you can constantly, as you're writing your outline, reflect back on that purpose statement and think, what is the purpose? What am I doing here? So after listening to my speech, my audience will go vote if you're doing a persuasive speech. Okay, you're not going to actually say, after listening to my speech, my audience is going to go vote, because you're talking to your audience. That, like, I don't say to you right now, what I'm telling students is that students need to write a sentence because I'm talking to you, the students. So I say you as the pronoun instead of students. So the specific purpose statement is written for you so that you can think about, what am I doing for my audience? The thesis statement is said directly to your audience. So you're going to say, after listening to my speech, you all will want to go vote. So you're talking directly to them, delivering it directly to them. It's your little summarized message of what this whole speech and its goal is. After you've defined your general specific purpose and figured out your thesis statement, your goal of the whole speech, you're going to start gathering information. And so you want to start figuring out what your key points are. You want to decide on the organization. And we'll talk more about those different patterns and things that you can use in another video. But brainstorming this will help you to identify this. And so you want to maybe start looking online. It's fine if you want to do a general Google search or start at Wikipedia, but know that those aren't really scholarly sources. They can give you some good background information and some starting points, but after you gain that background information, you want to delve deeper, because this is a college level speech, into more scholarly sources, things that are more credible than just what you've read on the internet. And so you can start on the internet, but then you want to get into library databases, scholarly articles, reputable newspapers, etc. But that'll help you to kind of figure out what information you have so that you can best organize it. You always want to double check your sources, because as we know, we live in a world that is full of disinformation or fake news. And because there is so much information out there, it's very easy to find something that you already agree with. This is called confirmation bias. And so confirmation bias means that you already think something's true, and therefore your brain filters out any information that goes counter to what you think is true. And so then you're only looking at sources that already confirm what you believe. You want to combat this by looking at a wide variety of sources. You want to make sure that your sources are credible and reputable, that they are trusted. Generally, things that you find in a library database are going to have been vetted by lots of scholars, not just one person. So that's going to help remove this idea of bias, that one person had an agenda and selected this source and made it fit their point of view. Multiple people will have peer-reviewed this information and therefore made it more credible, so you can trust that what you're reading is more objective than what you might find just on any general internet search. So be aware that we all have biases. We all have ways that we see the world and believe the world to be. But a scholar, someone who's educating themselves, is going to understand that you have to be open to learning new things that maybe don't agree with how you've always done it. So be open to that. Read lots of a variety of sources and don't just pick the ones that you already agree with. Something else you need to be aware of when you're doing internet searches or you're on social media to find your news is that you exist in a filter bubble. Algorithms these days on places like YouTube, Google, Facebook, anything, the algorithms are set to give you more of what you've already received. So for instance, I like sometimes to check on my phone. I'll go to my Google and then I go to what's called Discover. And I notice that I'm always getting the same types of articles. Like one time I looked up an article about Candace Cameron Bure, the chick VJ who used to be on Full House and is on Fuller House too. I looked up an article about her, and now on my Discover, I see articles about her all the time. And I'm like, when did I become such a Candace Cameron Bure fan? I don't know. But the algorithm, because I clicked on that once, is set to give me more of what they think I want again. So the more I click on it, the more they give to me. So when you keep seeing the same headlines and the same style of writing or the same things again and again, it's because the algorithm is set to give you what you want. It's not that that's the only news out there. I have a relative on social media who is constantly lamenting, why doesn't the news media cover this? Well, they are covering it. You just don't subscribe to that particular news media, and therefore you're not seeing that. So, it's interesting because you have to be willing to step outside your bubble and again, look at a variety of sources if you want to get more than just an update on the cast of Full House. All right, that moves us to organizing the body of the speech. Any speech is covered by a basic organizational plan, which is the introduction, the body, which typically is a minimum of 2 points and a maximum of 5, and a conclusion. Next, we'll talk a little bit more about structuring the speech.